passives more often.
G'day guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be showcasing the Blood and Steel Witchhunter. I'm going to be showing you off what is new. I'm going to be showing off the gems, passives, and gear, and touching a little bit on the leveling process. All of this will be in timestamps below, so feel free to jump back and forth to what is applicable to you. And before we do get started, I do want to just say we are very close to 2,000 subscribers, so if this video is helpful, please chuck it a like, chuck it a subscribe, and it'll help me out a lot. I want to hit that 2,000 by the end of the year. On another note, I have written up an incredibly detailed written guide for this build. It will be linked in the description as well as, and the top comment will also be pinned with the guide. So feel free to check that out. We are going to go over the gear first, because it is going to be more applicable to the passives when we go over them. The most important part of the build is the Mirrors Uxor Covert Hood. Everything doesn't matter on this except for the 100% increased culling strike threshold. This build uses culling as one of its primary sources of removal. What is culling? Culling means we kill enemies instantly at a certain health threshold. Now we are going to be using items and passives to increase that threshold to a very, very large amount. Next important piece is the Beetle Bite Velo Shoes. This aggravates bleeding on enemies when they enter your presence. Presence, I believe it's 8 meters, but you might have to check the wiki just to 100% confirm that hasn't changed or is incorrect completely. But that means when an enemy is close to us, their bleeding is going to be aggravated and it's going to absolutely demolish them. Everything else is pretty standard for a physical kind of build. We just want to make sure we get a loads of life, loads of resistances, and on the amulet, allocate Crushing Verdict. Crushing Verdict synergizes very, very well with this build. 5% reduced attack speed, not ideal, but that's fine. 30% increased stun build up and 50% increased attack damage. We do utilize stun quite a lot, so you will see that as well in play with the passives once we go over them. Everything else, again, pretty standard. Just try and get the best physical bow you possibly can. If you can get a plus level 2 projectile skills, that'll be even better. Now, going off my gear, it is not amazing, but it is enough to do maps. Moving on to the passive tree. Let's go ahead and zoom out. I will cover the Ascendencies last, but we are going to change it a little bit from last season. Not a lot, you'll notice. We do drop a lot of the AoE nodes because we don't have no real need for that anymore. We are not using any explosions really from the arm explosion. So sticking to the standard, we'll go ahead and grab Remorseless. This of course increases the stun build up, which is lovely, and Feel No Pain, and Ricochet. This will allow us a pretty easily leveling process, a decent survivability, good damage, good stuff. From there, we want to move all the way over to the blood tree and grab all of these nodes because we want to get the bleeding up and running as soon as possible, because we will be grabbing the Herald of Blood to utilize this. Then you want to prioritize the cruel methods along with the other small passives. This will allow us to damage the mobs very, very quickly with our primary ability, which is armor piercing rounds. We'll go over that as well. Next, we'll move on to the two-handed tree. All of this applies to crossbows because they are classed as two-handed, which is awesome. They're all pretty basic stuff. Increased damage, increased stun build-up, and it also gives us much needed attributes. Moving on down the tree, you are then going to want to get Defiant and After Image. I have forgotten one. Right here, after the two-handed node, you want to grab a backup plan and Exposed Wounds. Then move down here and grab Defiance and After Image. Once you have those, your defenses will be very powerful. You will be able to pretty much smash through the early axe with very, very little issue. You're going to want to grab Aggravation first, and then Deep Wounds, along with the other small nodes. This will allow us to keep our bleed up consistently with very little issue. Moving on down, we are going to, of course, grab Bleeding Out, fixing some more of our accuracy, as well as, of course, just straight up more damage as long as they're bleeding. And they're always going to be bleeding. Also, we're going to go ahead and grab Advanced Munitions. Then moving all the way over here, we want to grab Cull the Hordes, and then Bounty Hunter, and finish them. Let's go over this. Cull the Hordes increases Culling Strike threshold against rare and unique enemies by 40%. Then moving on up here, we have even further increase to an additional 40%. And then over here, if the enemy is immobilized, they have an additional 40% on top of that. Now, stunned enemies are classed as mobilized, heavy stuns. We are going to be utilizing heavy stuns quite often. That means when we are heavy stunning bosses and other rares, they are going to be taking a very large amount of damage, and their instant kill point is going to increase. Meaning we can kill bosses a lot quicker than other builds. After you have acquired this, we are going to move over to Deterioration. Of course, just increasing the power of our bleeds is just straight up a buff to us. Moving on back here, we want to go ahead and grab Giant Slayer. This just increases the amount of damage we deal to unique and rares, as well as increasing the chance to inflict ailments. This will allow us to reach 100% chance to inflict ailments, i.e. bleed, on any attack with our setup. Over here, once you have acquired these, then we're just going to go over to here and grab level bound gauntlets. Make sure that your gauntlets are only armor, so you can benefit from them the maximum, essentially. This gives you 1 evasion per 1 armor on equipped glove. So basically just straight up free evasion rating. And over here, 8% evasion rating as extra armor. Just straight up buffs. Then, finally, we head over and grab reusable ammunition. This will allow us to fire our armor-piercing rounds a hell of a lot more than the 20 times that it is by default. This will get you up to level 80. Now, I have included 80 to 100 even in the written guide linked below. I won't be going over that in this video, so please do feel free to check that out. They're just very basic additions, like grabbing careful aim and heavy ammunition. None are really in an order, same as polymathy. Go check that out. Pretty straightforward. Let's go over the jewels. This here is an absolute game changer. Well, it's not that big of a game changer, but it's good, nice to have. Part of the Well was added this league. It can roll random stats, so you're not always going to find ones with the increased culling threshold and chance to inflict bleed. We want to get at least 20% increased culling strike threshold, and the maximum, which is 10% inflicted bleed hit. We need this because we need to hit that 100% chance with our shots to get bleed. And over here, this one is kind of up to you. Generally, I would say get the maximum of 7% bleed chance, as well as global physical. If you cannot get a global physical, get the presence area effect and stun build up. That will, of course, help build up stun, but it also affects the presence of our passive coming from our boots. Aggravate bleeding enemies when they enter your presence. So essentially, it's just a 25% increase presence radius, which means we don't have to get as close to the enemies when we are fighting them. Now, basically all it is with this tree Very basic, very basic stuff. As much culling as possible to hit those insane numbers. As much bleed as possible to make sure that we are always applying bleed. And as much evasion and armor that we can acquire around this path that we are taking. Very basic, very simple. Onto the ascensions. Now, originally we had the obsessive rituals as the primary ascension to get on as your first ascendancy point. Things have changed. It is easier to get attribute points, which means it is easier to get gear that is defensible and not just focusing on attributes. I believe they lowered the attribute costs for pretty much everything across the board, so it is just so much easier to gear. That kind of makes the Obsessive Ritual and Sorcery Ward a lot less beneficial, although still beneficial. Because of this, I found that I didn't need to acquire this for survivability early on. Now, I am hitting the point where I do need it as I get later in maps, so I will be acquiring this as my fourth. I chose to acquire it as a fourth opposed to the third, but that is a complete optional of how you are feeling. Do you want more damage? Go Decimating Strike. Do you need more survivability? Go Sorcery Ward. But for the first one, we are going to grab Zealous Inquisition. 10% chance for enemies you kill to explode, dealing 100% of the maximum life as physical damage. Chance is doubled against undead and demons. So, this bad boy will start proccing and allow you to absolutely decimate the campaign. Really, you could do the entire campaign with just this. It's pretty good. And of course, the second one and the priority, as soon as you can get the second one, you know, I mean, if you want to, Culling Strike. You know, it's all our stuff that increases Culling Strike threshold. None of it actually gives us Culling Strike. So here we go, Culling Strike right here. That will activate all the thresholds, and I will go over the percentages, assuming my math is correct, in one moment. Next, I decided to go to Decimating Strike, which hits against full life enemies removed 5% and 30% of life before the damage of the hit is applied. That means our percentage of actual damage we need to do to an enemy before they instantly get culled is a hell of a lot smaller. Things die real quickly. Alright, let me bring up the details for the calculations. I'm really hoping I got the math correct, because I am going to quote it right now. Culling Strike, with all of the modifiers that we have and that we can possibly get to. Now, this is a max roll duel. This is all of the culling nodes. And with an additional, I believe, culling... No, the additionals did not get calculated into the math. So I did not calculate if they were immobilized, so this will be additional on top. That won't be in the calculations, and I didn't calculate the additional from one of our skill gems, Culling Strike, which we'll go over very soon. So the calculations, without those, but with a max roll, oh god, is Heart of the Well? With a max roll Heart of the Well, which is, this is not a max roll, you can get up to 25%. So max roll Heart of the Well. Uniques will die at 50% of their 15% of their HP. Once they hit 15%, they're dead. That is a lot of damage that we do not have to do. Rares will die at 30% of their HP. Magic monsters will die at 48% of their HP. Almost 50% of their HP, they're just dead. And normal white mobs will die at 72% of their HP. Meaning we only need to do 28% damage for them to just instantly die. And once we move over to our skills, you'll see how that can escalate very quickly. Let's go ahead and have a look at the skill gems now. We are using obviously our primary ability, our primary clear ability is armor piercing rounds. So this breaks armor, making our hits do a hell of a lot more damage. Our first link will be Chain to allow the armor-piercing rounds to spread to all enemies in front of us. Brutality to increase the physical damage that we do. Rapid Attacks to increase our DPS. Heft to increase the maximum physical damage that we can possibly do. And Life Drain to recover 12% of maximum life over 4 seconds when supported skills cull an enemy. This Life Drain is absolutely insane. And for some strange reason, this league, 6-socketing a gem, pretty cheap. So, I would say just grab it. Grab it when you can. While you are leveling, I did want to touch on this. We want to make sure that we get rid of these. While leveling, your leveling build should just have Chain, Armor Explosion, and Rapid Attacks. Let me go ahead and grab the Armor Explosion just so I can show you which one it is. There it is. This bad boy will deal, will convert 100% of physical damage to fire damage. Attack of this skill is, attack damage of this skill is 30% of default attack damage. Cannot break armor. So essentially, whenever the whenever the armor-piercing rounds break the armor, which will happen very, very quickly, we will cause an explosion. And obviously, multiple explosions going off at once will decimate the leveling process. Incredibly easy. However, once we get to level 56 and we can equip the Myric's Uxor, as well as getting those culling nodes, it is no longer beneficial to use that gem. We want to have our physical damage as high as humanly possible. And because Brutality allows no elemental damage, the Armor Explosion, it will become completely useless. Level 56. Anything before that, use Armor Explosion. Very easily leveling. Next, we have High Velocity Rounds. This is our single target deleter. We are going to be using Brutality, Deep Cuts, Heft, Physical Mastery, and I believe it was Preparation. Let me go just double check. Deliberation, sorry. Port gem called Deliberation for our 6 socket, if you happen to be able to get that. Now, the only thing that is reducing our damage is the Deep Cuts, but it gives us 100% more magnitude of bleeding. So we're going to be causing extreme amounts of bleeding with this bad boy. And with the changes to high velocity rounds this league, it applies Riven Armor. Initially, it did more damage, a very large amount of damage, if the enemy had broken armor, it would do more damage. But now, it applies a Riven Armor, which increases the physical damage that is being received. So instead of shooting off 1 high velocity round, we're now aiming to shoot off 3, and then rotate back to piercing rounds to break that armor yet again. That is the best rotation, I would say. Over here on Herald of Blood, this was added last league. This is absolutely incredible. Everything that dies explodes, removing bodies from the field. The explosion does do damage, but the damage is unfortunately not scalable, so it is dependent on gem level. That's why we go ahead and add Physical Mastery, so we can get that gem level as high as possible. However, the splash of the explosion can be utilized to apply debuffs. It also has a 58% chance to aggravate bleeding on hit, which is great. Most of the time, there will be aggravated bleeding anyway. So I went ahead and grabbed Blind, Maim, and Culling Strike as the points here. Now, I did mention I would go over the additional Culling Strike gem, and this is it. So, supported skills have Culling Strike against rare or unique enemies. Cool, we already have that. That means nothing to us. However, gain 20% increased Culling Strike threshold for 20 seconds on culling with supported skills. That means every time something dies and explodes, it will be classed as a cull. And that means this bad boy here will then give us a buff for 20 seconds, increasing culling strike threshold. This applies to all mobs, not just rare and uniques, because our special Witchhunter culling strike applies to all mobs, not just rare or unique, which the gem is. Another reason Witchhunter is so goddamn powerful. So this 20% is going to be up a lot. And that's not taken into our calculations, same as the immobilization bonus, which is a total of additional 60%, which is great. Wind Dance. Wind Dance is a staple of this build. This allows us to gain stacks of evasion, up to 30% additional evasion. And when being hit, it spends those evasion points to attack and push back the enemies, and we make sure they are blinded and maimed when that happens. So sticky situations become a lot less sticky. Over here we have Salvage Plate. This is a continuation from last league as well. A return. This bad boy will give us 40% extra armor at max stacks. This creates a stack every time we break armor, which is incredibly easy because of the armor piercing rounds. I have prolonged duration to increase the duration of the stacks before they deteriorate. Precision, just to boost our accuracy. Also, we have a last 10 spirit to spend due to the fact that some of these are like not full. Is this one? No. Either way, we have 10 spirit to spend because I believe the campaign gives us 100 and all of these are like 90. So we use this. And then I went physical mastery just because it's a physical jam. Well, may as well level it up. This is a new addition to the build, the Bloodhound's Mark. This kind of works similar as Herald of Blood, but is a mark. So we apply it to an enemy, and when the enemy dies or gets heavy stunned, they will cause a explosion. Mark target releases a blood explosion on death if they have at least 5% heavy stun build up from blood loss, which is incredibly easy to do because marked target receives heavy stun buildup equal to 300% of blood loss. That means anything we apply this mark to will allow its blood loss to affect its stun gauge, which is insane. Absolutely insane. Now I use this on rare mobs and unique mobs to allow me to stun them and then apply that heavy stun. And as you remember, there is a modifier for heavy stuns to have a higher percentage of Culling Strike. 40% increased Culling Strike threshold against mobilized enemies, which also counts as heavy stunned. As you can see, that can be pretty crazy when killing your bosses. We have a altered. This used to be Ripwire Blister. Now it's Artillery Blister, and it essentially does the same thing. We pop it down and it pins enemies. So it will slowly slow them down, making fights a lot more manageable, allowing us to control the battlefield. I increase it with Brutality. That will increase the percentage of pin build-up, as well as we grab Blind and Rapid Attacks. If you can put it in another one, I would say just add Maim as well. We have multiple sources of Blind and Maim, just because they're great debuffs, and it really doesn't cost us anything to add them. Next, we have Emergency Reload. This is another returning gem. We have Buff Empowered Bolts with 29% more damage. That'll obviously increase as you level it up. And we have Cooldown Recovery, just because it's a pretty long cooldown. It's pretty damn long. Yeah, 34 seconds with that on. But it will empower all of our bolts, making them do a lot more damage. That is it for the skill gems. As you can see, our game plan is we walk in, we spam, we kill everything. If it happens to be a rare, we will apply the Bloodhound Mark and then switch to our high velocity round and release 3 rounds. And then we'll switch back and do our armor piercing. I believe that covers everything in the build changes. I think I covered everything. Charms, really just stun protection, so hard stuns, make sure you can't be frozen, make sure you can't be stunned, and I just added a bleeding one there because I like to move around a lot and I don't like to die when I'm moving. I think that's it. I think we covered everything. Alright, passive tree, yes, check. Passive tree is covered. Gems, we covered gems. Gear, we covered gear. Beautiful. Thank you very much for watching. Again, there is going to be some gameplay showcases after this, be a full map. And if you like this, please like and subscribe. Full written guide in the description field. Bye-bye.